Hi, y'all. This is Tennie McCarty from big, beautiful Buffalo Gap, Texas, south of Abilene. We're a little village of 463 people. There's a lot of good people here with a few old sore heads, but all towns have that combination. But anyway, I own a treatment center. My daughter and I own a treatment center. It's an all addiction treatment center here in Buffalo Gap. We've been here for 33 years. I've been in the addiction field for over 40 years, but have been here for 33. We treat all addictions with a primary focus on eating disorders and codependency. So what I'm going to talk about today is a form of codependency. It's called triangulation. And triangulation is probably the max, the thing that we could do the most that spells out codependency, because it's about control. And triangulation is manipulation tactics where one person will not communicate directly with the other person, instead using a third person to communicate through. And so there's a lot of variables with triangulation, and it can show up with parent to child, where one parent talks to a child about another parent, which is very sick in itself. And that is triangulation, because when one parent, let's say the mother is upset with the dad, they've had maybe a fight or an argument, maybe even threatening divorce. And so for her to go, she's a victim, she sees herself as a victim. And so she will go and talk to one of her children and about what their father said. And that child becomes the rescuer. And then the other parent, the father, is the persecutor. Now that can switch in an instant, where the child maybe will go, in their innocence, will go tell the father what the mother said. So the child then becomes the victim, and the father will become the rescuer, and the mother the persecutor. So it is called manipulation, and can be very sick. It's all about control. And usually people who participate in triangulation suffers from some form of self-esteem, or maybe they're over-esteemed, they're up on a pedestal, and so it's about learning to be right-sized, whether we're not, don't have the low self-esteem or the high self-esteem. But anyway, triangulation can be done with parent to child. It can be between couples, and bring in the in-laws, which that is not the way to have healthy relationships within the family. For instance, in my own case, my husband was a practicing alcoholic, and I had a severe eating disorder, and ate myself up to like 287 pounds. It was like two active addicts living in the same household, and we became very ill together. So my husband's pattern would be, he would get drunk and he'd be gone 3 or 4 days, and then during that 3 or 4 days I would call my mother and I would talk about my husband. Now, I would not ever tell her the part that I played in the situation. I wouldn't tell her that when he would come home from after being, a night on the town or drinking 3 or 4 days, whatever, I didn't bother to tell her that I'd beat him up with a vacuum cleaner hose, or that I would rage to the top of my voice. No, I left that out. I just talked about how bad he was, that he was the persecutor, and how awful he treated me, and I was the victim. And then my mother would become the rescuer. I didn't know at that time that alcoholism was a disease. I thought my husband was drinking at me. And then so mother would be the rescuer, and many times she'd call and talk to my husband and try to straighten him out, and then my husband would become the victim, mother would be the persecutor, and then I'd rescue my husband. And it just, that triangle would keep going and on and on and on. And the way to stop this is for one person to pull out of the triangle. It only takes one. And so it can also be between close friends. It can be between countries. It can be in the board meetings of large corporations, and it can be on the playground, where one kid is being bullied by another one, and then another child comes in to rescue the victim, and then before long, then the one that is doing the persecuting, or the one that is the bully, by and large, they keep trading that triangulation out. And until the only way to stop it is to quit involving yourself in the process, pull yourself out of it. And so what this does, what the outcome is in triangulation, is extreme jealousy, and it's the division between people. And the victim in any triangulation has the power. That's where the control is the one that's playing the victim role at the time. And what the victim does, they present themselves with the poor me's. It's, oh, poor me, bless my heart. My mother was a prescription drug addict and was sick all of my life. And I know today that my mother was a narcissist. A narcissist is someone that everything is focused on them. And my mother was extreme. She was an orphan. I can understand today from her own background how she became to have the types of personality that she had. And what she would do is she would talk to my sister from the time we were little bitty girls. She would pit us against each other. She would tell my sister something that I had said or done, and then vice versa, and it would keep my sister and I at odds with each other. And then mother could be the rescuer, and then if we caught on to what she was doing, then she would go back to being the victim. And so it's a really sick form that people use to communicate, but it doesn't work. It is absolutely manipulation. And where the persecutor is, it's an individual that attacks the victim in any way. It could be a physical attack, a verbal attack. It could be through just criticism. That's what a persecutor does. And, they persecute the victim. And then the rescuer is someone that can be already in that triangle, that triangulation, or the victim will bring someone in to the triangle to rescue them. And when that happens, the rescuer, it gives them that sense of some power, and it's all about power and control, but it will give them the sense of being able to save the day. They're going to be the savior of the of the victim. They're going to rescue the victim. And so, like I said, the person that's in any one of those roles, whether they're the victim, the persecutor, or the rescuer, usually has some low self-esteem, and they get their esteem from being in a triangle like this. The victims always want someone to help them. The persecutor is finding fault with the victim, and the rescuer is trying to rescue the victim. And without getting into any, politics, if you watched the debates last night, we have some brilliant people, smart people. Very brilliant, smart, kind, God-fearing, loving people in the United States that could be running for president. But we have two men, and I want to say basically probably at their hearts there can be, there's good in both of them. But last night at the debates, if you want to know what triangulation is, you go back and watch that tape on the debate last night. Eleanor Roosevelt gave us this. She said that great minds discuss ideas. we didn't hear many ideas talked about last night at all. Ideas going forward that could help our country. Neither candidate talked much about and laid out their plan. They were too busy calling each other names and screaming at each other to really, calm down and tell people who there were millions of people watching. We are in a severe stage, a severe place in our country, and we need healthy leadership. And, I'm concerned about either one of these men being the leaders. But anyway, great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Last night, two of the things that they wanted to talk about was their, one of them talked about having thousands of people at his rallies and no mask and no, social distancing and all of that. They had everything outside, but, very braggadocious about, his event. And then the other one talked about, they both talked about these events. They didn't talk about the ideas. They talked about their followers. And that is, I believe, is a lot about self-centeredness. And then small minds talk about people. I want you to notice throughout there, last night, throughout the debates, both of them. And, with me talking, I'm not telling you, any of you, what my affiliation is. In fact, this morning, I'm doubting whether I'm even going to go vote. I have not missed voting since I was old enough to cast the first ballot, and I'm sure I will vote. And I'm sad to say I don't want to vote for either one of them. So last night, when people get in, when they run out, they didn't talk about the ideas. They didn't talk about goals going forward. When one of them would say something about the other one's son, and then the other one said, well, I'll talk about your children. That is being small-minded. That is talking about people. That is gossip. That is nothing but gossip and doing harm to whoever they're talking about. So if you really want to know about triangulation, that's a good example right there in that those two men displayed. I'm not being critical of either one of them. I'm criticizing how they wasted their time there for an hour and a half with an audience that really wanted to hear about some solutions, because our country is in trouble and we need solutions. And I pray that whichever one of those men are elected to be the next leader of our country, that they will start talking about the solutions and get on their knees and pray and ask God for directions, because we need it. God can and will heal any area of our lives that we're willing to surrender to Him. And I believe that is true for our country. There needs to be a lot of healing in our country. And I think that can start, that it needs to start with the leaders of our country. So another thing, body of people that can, speaking of God, another body of people that practice triangulation is in churches. You see it all the time, where there is gossip. And you'd think, now I will tell you, not everyone in churches do this. It's not a blanket coverage, but there is a lot of it in churches. And a lot of times the pastor or his wife or anyone in leadership, if you want to be criticized, just be a leader and then you'll get criticized. And so, but it's, it's people that are small-minded that talk about people instead of ideas and how to bring about solutions. And so let's say someone is upset with the pastor. The pastor said something or didn't say something or didn't do what they thought they needed to do. And so that person is the victim. And so that person will go tell someone else. Maybe they'll go tell a deacon, or maybe the deacon's wife, and whoever they're telling their sorry state of affairs to, They will rescue them. They might even join in with them talking about the pastor. And so then they will begin to persecute the pastor. So they've had the victim is the pastor. And then, the other person is the rescuer. And then the one that's doing the talking is the persecutor. So if and a lot of times the pastor won't even know he's involved or she's involved in it. But how you stop conflict is you go to the person themselves. You don't do it in a triangle that becomes gossip and nothing ever gets resolved. Years ago, when I supervised people and was really over at the center all the time, I would have, like if I had a disgruntled employee come to me that wanted to talk about another employee, I would listen, and then I would say, well, wait, and then I'd realize that they were coming to complain to me about another employee. And I would say, well, wait just a minute, let me go get them and bring them in here, and then you can retell the story or tell the full story with them present, and then you won't have to repeat it. I would do that every time that I had an employee that wanted to come, like tattle on another employee, and it stopped it. Now, what they needed to do was go, and I would have, meetings, staff meetings, and I would tell them, if you have a problem with another staff person, go talk to that person. And then if it can't be resolved, go talk to your immediate supervisor, the two of you. Then if it can't be resolved, then your supervisor can come to me. And so go up to the chain, but when you call out malicious gossip, it stops people in their tracks, because what they're wanting is someone to join them and agree with them. So I would encourage you not to get into that triangle. And so the best way to stop that type of triangulation is, like I said, is to pull out. Do not continue. Don't play your part. And a very simple solution is to push the pause button. When you're hearing something, some kind of criticism from a person, stop in the midst of it and push the pause button. And ask yourself, is what I'm getting ready to say back to this person, is it loving? And is it true? And then is it necessary? There's so many times that, we could offer some information that might be true, and we could say it in a loving way, but is it really necessary, or would it keep the triangulation going? Would you, when you would be saying something to the victim, would you become that rescuer in a very innocent way? And so ask yourself, is what I'm getting ready to say to this other person, is it loving? Is it true? And is it necessary? And when in doubt, don't. We can always say something that we can't, once it's out of our mouth, we can never take it back. So this is just some food for thought today on, and just to be aware of yourself. How do you play out the triangulation? And what it is to live in truth, stand in your truth. And when we stand tall, autonomous with the God of our understanding, then we can stand with other people, and we don't have to have someone in between us to carry the message for us. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have problems with this, and if you have problems with codependency or getting along with other people, we do a 4-day intensive once a month, and my daughter, who's a therapist, has been for 30 years, and myself, we do the intensive ourselves, and it's, like I said, it's very intense. We limit it to 4 to 6 people. We work long days. We work about 10 or 12 hours for each day. So people get a lot for their money, and what they look at is the core issues that's driving this type of codependent behavior. What is driving the need to be a victim? What is driving the need to be a persecutor? And what is driving the need to be a rescuer? most of this is learned behavior from childhood. So if you want to come look at your own core pain and maybe see the baggage that you're carrying from, from generations past, this is how family baggage is passed on from one generation to the next. I'll tell you this, it's like one day this daughter, it was before Thanksgiving, and she had gone shopping with her mother, grocery shopping, and the mother bought a whole ham, and she asked the butcher to cut the end off of the ham. And so the butcher did, and the daughter said, well, Mother, why do you always have the end cut off of the ham? Why do you do that? And she said, well, my mother did that. The pot that she cooked it in wasn't big enough for a whole ham, so she had the end cut off. And we've just always done it like that. We've always just had the end cut off. And here it was down to the third generation, and I'm sure they had bigger pots, but they were still cutting off the end of the ham. That is what family baggage does. We just do what this generation before us did until it creates maybe some harm in our life, and we have to really look at what we're carrying around of other people's. It's those carried feelings from the past. So if you want to come look at your own core pain and see, because if we don't look at our history, we're doomed to pass it on to our children, that family baggage. But the good news, it can stop in one generation. So I hope this has been helpful. Let us know any way that we can help. And just remember, when in doubt, don't. You can always say something, but once those words are out of your mouth, you can't take them back. Thanks for listening.